I'm going to show some clips from Trump's town hall with CNN, but they'll be followed by proper fact checks, something that CNN proved itself wholly and predictably incapable of doing when they aired this live.
I think that when you look at that result and when you look at what happened during that election, unless you're a very stupid person, you see what happens. A lot of the people in this audience, and maybe a couple that don't, but most people understand what happened. That was a rigged election, and it's a shame that we had to go through it. It's very bad for our country. All over the world, they looked at it, and they saw exactly what everyone else saw. You look, even if you just look recently with the 51 intelligence agents, that made a 16-point difference. If you look at the FBI, if you look at the FBI and Twitter, they call it Twitter files, made a big difference. If you look at
Mr. President, back to what you just said there, though, it was not a rigged election. It was not a stolen election. You and your supporters lost more than 60 court cases on the election. It's been nearly 2.5 years. Can you publicly acknowledge that you did lose the 2020 election?
Let me just go on. If you look at True the Vote, they found millions of votes on camera, on government cameras, where they were stuffing ballot boxes. So,
in Trump's very first response, he dove headfirst into election denialism. And CNN's Caitlin Collins offered up a tepid fact check that Trump quite literally ignored before picking up exactly where he left off. So that we're clear, there was zero proof of any semblance of widespread fraud in this election. There were more than 60 court cases brought forward by the Trump team and his allies, and at no point in any of those cases did they prove even a modicum of fraud. And I would ask, if all this fraud exists like Trump claims it does, then why didn't the Trump team bring it up in court? Why not litigate it, especially in front of the 8 Trump-appointed judges? Because it's not real. And Trump knows it's not real, but he thinks his supporters are stupid enough to believe it, so he says it anyway.
Do you have any regrets about your actions on January 6th?
Well, you know, January 6th was, again, we go back to it, but January 6th had to do with the fact that hundreds of thousands of people, and you don't see the pictures very often. A lot of the people here probably were there. January 6th, it was the largest crowd I've ever spoken to. That was prior to the walk down to the Capitol building. I don't think, and I've spoken to hundreds of thousands of people. I've never spoken to a crowd as large as this. And that was because they thought the election was rigged. And they were there proud. They were there with love in their heart. That was an unbelievable, and it was a beautiful day.
Just some January 6th revisionist history. This should go without saying, but no, January 6th was not a beautiful day. And in fact, one silver lining of this town hall, the only silver lining, was that the Biden campaign immediately came out with an ad in response to Trump's claim that it was a beautiful day.
January 6th, it was the largest crowd I've ever spoken to, and they were there proud. They were there with love in their heart. That was an unbelievable, and it was a beautiful day, and it was a beautiful day.
So I get that Trump wants to pretend that January 6th was great because he got the insurrection that he wanted, but by no means was it anything other than the biggest stain on this country in modern U.S. history.
This was a jury of 9 people who found you liable of sexual abuse. Do you think that will deter women from voting for you?
No, I don't think so, because I think the whole thing, just so you understand, ready? I never met this woman. I never saw this woman. This woman said, I met her at the front door of Bergdorf Goodman, which I rarely go into other than for a couple of charities. I met her in the front door. She was about 60 years old, and this is like 22, 23 years ago. I met her in the front door of Bergdorf Goodman. I was immediately attracted to her, and she was immediately attracted to me. And we had this great chemistry. We're walking into a crowded department store. We had this great chemistry, and a few minutes later, we end up in a room, a dressing room of Bergdorf Goodman, right near the cash register. And then she found out there were locks on the door. So she said, I found one that was open. She found one. She learned this at trial. She found one that was open. What kind of a woman meets somebody and brings them up, and within minutes, you're playing hanky-panky in a dressing room, okay?
Now, I want to be clear about what you just saw. For some background here, the audience was, quote, filled with about 400 voters who are Republicans or Republican-leaning independents. In other words, CNN literally created a Trump rally. And here, in this clip, Trump mocks the sexual abuse victim who he was found liable for abusing and defaming literally yesterday, while an audience of his own fans laughs along. The notion that this is on television in 2023 is sickening unto itself, but knowing that CNN created this scene, a scene that was entirely predictable, is truly beyond reproach. In fact, Jonathan Swan reported that, quote, advisors to Trump are thrilled at how this is going so far for him. They can't believe he is getting an hour on CNN with an audience that cheers his every line and laughs at his every joke. So yeah, a literal Trump rally. Bravo, CNN. Bravo.
I say to the Republicans out there, congressmen, senators, if they don't give you massive cuts, you're going to have to do a default. And I don't believe they're going to do a default because I think the Democrats will absolutely cave because you don't want to have that happen. But it's better than what we're doing right now because we're spending money like drunken sailors.
So just to be clear, Mr. President, you think the U.S. should default if the White House does not agree to the spending cuts Republicans are demanding?
You might as well do it now because you'll do it later. Because we have to save this country. Our country is dying. Our country is being destroyed by stupid people, by very stupid people.
You once said that using the debt ceiling as a negotiating wedge just could not happen. You said that when you were in the Oval Office.
That's when I was president.
So why is it different now that you're out of office?
Because now I'm not president.
That's Trump endorsing the U.S. defaulting on its debt. Now, just a moment of background here. If Congress doesn't raise the debt ceiling, which they've done without fail, literally for our entire history, then the U.S. would default on its debts, which could happen as early as June 1st. That would crater our economy in the stock markets, along with global markets, and risk the dollar as the world's reserve currency. It would be an unmitigated economic disaster. Now, I want to be clear about something. Raising the debt ceiling is not a way to rein in spending, like Republicans claim. It is solely about paying the bills that we've already incurred. That's all. So when Trump pretends that this is normal to hold our own economy hostage to exact concessions in the form of passing a far-right Republican agenda, it is not. This is basically the leader of the Republican Party, the party of fiscal responsibility, endorsing the idea of blowing up a plane that we're all flying on if he doesn't get his way legislatively. So the next time you think to yourself that Republicans might just be better on the economy, remember that their plan right now is to blow it up in order to shoehorn their own deeply unpopular agenda into being. Trump would go on to lie that Democrats are killing babies after they're born. He would lie that he finished hundreds of miles of border wall. He would lie that Obama was responsible for child separation. He would lie that he was allowed to steal classified documents from the White House. And then, to round it out, he would say this to the moderator, Caitlin Collins.
Why you held on to those documents when you knew the federal government was seeking them and then had given you a subpoena to return them?
Are you ready? Are you ready? Can I talk?
Yeah, what's
you
the
mind?
answer?
Do you mind?
I would like for you to answer the question.
Okay, it's very simple to answer.
That's why I asked it.
It's very simple to, you're a nasty person, I'll tell you.
Can you answer why you held on to?
Yeah, who could have possibly guessed that Trump would use his platform given to him by CNN to then trash one of CNN's journalists? Other than, of course, everyone. Now, this was all followed by this moment of relative clarity by Jake Tapper after the town hall ended.
About the threat to Vice President Pence, about Pence's ability to overturn the election, about COVID, about the economy, and more. He called a black law enforcement officer a thug. He said people here in Washington, D.C. at Chinatown don't speak English. He attacked Caitlin as a nasty woman because she was trying to get him to answer a question. Perhaps most chillingly, the day after a 9-person jury of his peers in New York found him liable for sexual battery and defamation and ordered him to pay writer E. Jean Carroll $5 million, he made fun of her account of her sexual assault. And many in the audience laughed.
But I would also offer up that you should not have to fact-check the lies that you just voluntarily aired on your own platform. This is like applauding Exxon for cleaning up oil that they just spilled. Maybe a better way to approach this is for CNN not to platform the liar instead of doing a half-baked fact-check only after the event is already finished. Just, you know, for starters. And look, yes, Trump is a liar and a vile excuse for a human being. That goes without saying. But for CNN to make the conscious decision to lend him their platform and fill an audience with Trump supporters who would clap for his lies and laugh at his jokes is an absolute travesty. That network was so thirsty for some ratings that they gave this guy a platform in the most welcoming of conditions so that he could do what everyone with a pulse knew what he would do, which was to spread his lies and conspiracy theories and even attack their own moderator. I hope it was worth it. I hope that when we look back at this moment, with American democracy still very much in peril, that CNN can be proud knowing that the way they met this moment was to voluntarily platform the guy whose last act in office was to try and steal the election and incite an insurrection on the U.S. Capitol, all for a ratings grab. The fact is that this right here is why independent media is so important. Between Fox and CNN, it is clear that certain mainstream media outlets in this country are so desperate for money and ratings that any allegiance they had to democracy or the truth truth come in at a distant second. And so what we're left with is a purported news network, making the conscious decision to air a liar with no discernible plan to fact-check him because they knew people would tune in. And so now, thanks again to a news network, people are going to walk away from that town hall thinking that Democrats are killing babies after birth, or that Trump erected hundreds of miles of border wall, or that the election was stolen, or whatever other lies Trump spewed with barely any pushback, thinking they heard the truth. Tonight, a news outlet actively made people less informed, and that is just beyond disgraceful. So I would very immodestly ask that if you're not yet subscribed to this channel, please subscribe and help grow a progressive media ecosystem whose decisions aren't dictated by a relentless focus on both sides. Because if certain legacy media outlets have decided that ratings are more important than democracy, then we should switch to outlets that actually understand the moment that we're living in. Before you go, I need your help. I'm right on the cusp of hitting 2 million subscribers, so please help me grow this channel